Let's talk about light leaks. What are they and what can we do about them? As we can see in this particular scene, we see this white banding of light at virtually every single edge. These artifacts are created when we have light outside the object that actually leaks inside to the interior volume. If we examine this cube, we will see that every one of these vertexes are lined up properly. In other words, there is actually no gap anywhere inside this cube to allow this light to leak in. So then, why is that happening? Perhaps it's important to understand that this is not unique to Eevee's rendering system. Many real-time renderers like Unity and Unreal both have problems with light leakage. For instance, here, if I search for Unreal Engine 4 light leakage, you'll see there's a lot of information on how to deal with light leakage in Unreal as well as Unity. So let's talk about how we can get rid of light leakage. First off, it's important to understand that screen space reflections can sometimes simulate light leakage. Like for instance, if you see this little light down here, which that's actually a reflection and not light leakage. But I'm going to turn that off anyways, just to make sure that we don't have any false positives. Next, let's make sure we free the lighting cache so that we don't have remnants of previous bakes incorporating light leaks. So if you remember, I mentioned light leaks are formed when there's light outside of a enclosed environment that leaks to the inside. So one of the easiest ways to get rid of light leaks is to remove all lights outside of the environment. So in this particular case, I'm going to click on the sun and I'm going to just hide it. And then I'm going to turn on this area light on the inside. So if we look at this is a light looking in the inside. Now you can see almost instantaneously we've gotten rid of all the light leaks. There is one other condition where you may also find there may be some serious light leaks, and that is with an HDRI lighting outside of the enclosed environment. Here I've turned off the interior area light and added an HDR light outside to light the scene, and as you can see, we're seeing quite a bit of light leakage around the object. So it's important to understand you may want to limit HDRIs or in fact even omit them, as there are other ways to create an environment as you look through the window. A corollary to this is that on rare occasions, if you push the background color too high with too much strength, you may also get some light leaks. Always consider the background color as your ambient color in the scene. It's been suggested not to use the sun as a primary light source for a scene when you're trying to light the interior. Instead, use a point light. So if we look at this particular scene, we see that we have the sun up here and it's shining in here. If I switch that sun to a point light, we have less light leaks, but we also have less light. So we would have to actually add energy into it to get it brighter. But when we add the energy back, we still have some artifact. I'm not sure that the sun versus point light is all that important of a distinction at this stage. But there is a way that we can help the situation with an outside light, and we can distinguish between the advantages of a point light over a sunlight. So let's see how we do this. We'll select this object and I'm going to add a modifier to it. We've already added one. It's called a solidify modifier, and it's right here, solidify. And I'm going to just turn this on, and you can see how much the light leaks have drastically been reduced, but there still are some. And if I adjust this thickness, the thicker I get, the more they are reduced. And the thinner I get, the less they are reduced. So this means that if you want to try and prevent light leaks, it's important to add thickness to your walls. Also, if we go back to this sun and instead we use a point light, we'll see that it reduces significantly more as well. And we can even jack up the energy in the point light, and we still will have quite a bit less of a light leak, but we still have some. Again, we can go back in here to our cube object and we can add the thickness, and at some point that's going to go completely away. So the key takeaway here is that point lights versus sunlights are better on the outside, and adding wall thickness will always help mitigate any type of light leakage you may have. So then what do we do if we have thinner walls, as in this particular case? Well, thanks to Ekline, a member on blenderartist.org, he gave us a really good solution for this, and let's go over that. What he suggests is let's change the shadow settings for the light. We're going to change the clip start to 0.01. We're moving that closer. The softness now we're going to take completely away. The bias we're going to change to 0.001. Exponent we leave alone. Bleed bias is 0.01. And then we're going to turn on contact shadows. And then we're going to make the softness, since we remove the softness from here, we're going to put the softness back in here. And if we go back to our Eevee settings, we'll remember that we already have soft shadows and high bit depth set up. But the only thing that we need to change is this ESM. So let's change that from ESM to VSM. And now you see we have a very nice interior with absolutely no light leaks and a very thin wall. So this works really well. Let's go ahead and add some intensity to the point light. So instead of 60, we'll make it 80. See, we're getting it brighter. I can even make it 500. And we only have just a slight light leak at the very top. And that's probably too high anyway. So the takeaway here is consider using these settings that we just talked about. A solution I like to use is to use area lights instead of point lights or sunlights. Let's take a look at that. Here we have a window in the side of this cube, and right now we're lighting the cube with the sunlight. I'm going to turn that off, and now we have no lights, and I'm going to actually go over to this area light right here, and I'm going to turn it on. And as you can see, once I turn that on, it starts to light the interior. The problem is, as you can see also, is that we get quite a bit of light bleed around the opening of the window. So how do we fix this? Well, one thing we can do is we can move the area light outside the window farther. The farther we go, the less light bleed we're going to have. Another solution is also interesting, is that baking will help solve some light bleed problems. Let's do that. Let's go over and we'll do a bake. And now you can see the light bleed has fixed itself quite nicely. And then finally, you can also put the object right on the inside of the window. But when you do that, you don't get this nice bright highlight along the edge rim of the window, which is kind of what would be nice to do. So I'm going to clear out the baking, bake it one more time, and you'll see how much difference baking makes in terms of modifying the light bleed. Move it out one more time. Free, bake the cube map, and there we have it. So I prefer using these area lights to cover all of the windows, and you can colorize them if you like to be the color of either the sun or the sky, depending on your preference. A couple other points I want to make. If you look at this particular scene, you see we've extended these walls and made them quite thick, but we still have quite a bit of light leak. And the reason for this is that we have the actual area light is in the middle of the wall, and you really don't want that to be the case. You want to actually move it outside the wall. Any of the lights need to be outside the wall. So as we move it outside the wall, we see that we're going to lose the light leak that we were talking about. The closer we get to the wall, we're going to actually increase the light leak. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing that's similar, but you'll find it occurs in a different way, is if we look at our irradiance map and we actually scale that so that it actually sits outside the wall also. And you'll see when we bake, we'll get some very weird artifacts. And these are not necessarily light leaks, but they are very bizarre. And the way to fix those, obviously, is just make sure that all the dots on your irradiance volume are inside your room. Let's free the lighting clash. Let's bake it again. And now you see it's much better. I hope this helps you in working out strategies and techniques to help solve light leak issues with your interiors.